Today's episode of the Cedric A. Phillips podcast is brought to you by Humans. Humans, the deck that won Mythic Championship London in the hands of Eli Loveman, a player that defeated me at Grand Prix Memphis earlier this year in a Azorius aggro mirror. He played better than me then. I presume he played better than me now, and he is your most recent Mythic Championship champion. That rolls off the tongue a little bit weird, but it is what it is. Humans is a deck I am pretty fond of, and so it's nice to see that deck have a lot of success in the hands of Eli and old BBD, who got his first Pro Tour top 8 after being a world champion. It's weird to have those things be separate and different, but also meaningful. So congratulations to Brian as well. Me and Ryan Overturf, we talk about the decks that made the top 8 as well as some decks that didn't, that performed well at Mythic Championship London. We also go over our predictions from last week during our preview and see how close we have felt we got and also where we think this modern format is headed. And then we close things out by talking about the disqualification of Yuya Watanabe and how we approach it as fans of him, fans of the game, but also people who care about the long-term health of the game. It makes for an interesting conversation that I hope each and every single one of you do enjoy. But before we get there, we of course have to start here with Jul Vera, Julevera. They have a new album coming down the pipeline, couple new singles over on Spotify and YouTube and wherever else you do get your music. So we'll play one of those new songs again, and then me and the Turf are talking MC London. All right, everybody, welcome to back-to-back weeks of magic here on the Cedric A. Phillips podcast. I'm your host, Cedric Phillips, at Cedric A. Phillips on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and all the other places you can find me. And as Ryan mentioned last week, you can only find him on Twitter at Ryan Overdrive. Have you considered Instagram yet, or?
I can't keep up with that stuff, man. The big barrier for me is that Instagram does not generate content in the way that I consume it. I understand that marketing these days is all about capturing people's attention. Pictures, videos is how you do it, but they're not for me. I much prefer text-based things, so I just can't get into it.
Oh, then you would hate Instagram.
Oh, yeah, it's just extremely not for me.
Have you tried Snapchat?
I had Snapchat. An ex-girlfriend of mine was really into Snapchat, and it felt so good to finally delete it after we broke up.
So I'm actually really glad you said that, because that's also the reason I have Snapchat. Is an ex-girlfriend of mine was just like, hey, do you use Snapchat? And I'm like, no, I'm old. No.
Yeah.
And then I learned how Snapchat worked, and I was like, so it just disappears after a while?
Your cell phone has enough memory to hold 100 billion pictures. Why do they just get deleted? I don't understand.
I don't understand the app at all. I still don't get it.
Yeah, I had it. I no longer have it. I hope to never have it again.
Yeah, it's so I did this thing on my iPhone where so I'm like, really, I think it's OCD is the term, and I actually organize my apps alphabetically. And then I decided to put them into boxes, and then those are ordered alphabetically, and then everything within the box is ordered alphabetically. I'm a crazy person. But the Snapchat one is actually just on the second page of my phone where I never go. So it's just kind of in exile right now. And, maybe I should just delete it. But for some reason, I've convinced myself that maybe at some point again, I'll need it. And re-downloading things isn't even that hard, but it just feels weird to delete it and then have to re-download it, because that's like conceding, kind of. I'm not sure. It feels like defeat, but I don't ever touch this thing.
I mean, there is that desire to be able to keep up with and understand all of the new technologies and platforms, but it's just never going to happen for me. I've moved on.
I'm trying to figure out when that feeling hits, right? That's like officially being old, when you're just like, I don't want to learn any more shit. And that hasn't happened with me yet.
I'm still cool learning more shit, just not that shit.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I was like trying to teach my dad how to use Spotify, and he was just like, I'm good with CDs. And I'm like, but this just has all the CDs, man. You don't even need a CD. You just have this device that has all the CDs. And he's like, I'm just going to keep buying CDs. And eventually they're going to stop making CDs. But I guess my dad's just not worried about that.
Now, speaking of Spotify, this is a good example of where I am at with technology. So recently, Spotify and Hulu announced a partnership. The way it works, if you have a Spotify subscription, you also get the basic Hulu subscription as well, which is the one that's a little bit heavier on commercials. But if you're already paying for Spotify and you weren't paying for Hulu, it's a free roll. As for myself, at the time that this merger took place, this new program was launched, I was subscribed to both platforms, and I paid for an extra month of Hulu because I didn't want to try to figure out how to actually merge my accounts.
Have you since merged them?
Yeah, that's taken care of now.
Good.
But
Okay.
It was on my to-do list for a while before I did.
Okay, well, I'm very proud of you. Also, I didn't know about this merger, so it feels like I should not be paying for Hulu, is what you just told me.
Yeah, unless you're paying for like the version that's commercial free or whatever, it costs extra or whatever, but it's totally worth it if you don't have patience for that kind of stuff. You know, personally, I don't mind commercials. I grew up on them.
Commercials don't really bother me. I mean, they're mostly horrible, but it also gives me a minute to look at my phone, which I was already doing while I was watching the show anyway.
Same.
So I've realized that this is also just kind of a problem. So, like, I have a Hulu subscription. I don't use it. I used it to watch Fire Festival, the doc on, like, there's a doc on both things. I wanted to watch the Hulu one, got the trial, then got dinged by the trial, and I've just been in the hard lock ever since. I guess if I get to merge, then I don't get the ding anymore for an app I don't ever use, but everyone tells me Hulu's like pretty good. So this is just a problem.
Yeah, and it's not like a huge problem, but it is a stupid problem and a very solvable one.
Well, it's the subscription lock, and I think eventually this is some comedian's joke that I'm thieving here, but eventually it's just like there's just going to be, a package that has Netflix and Hulu and Spotify and everything in it in one big package that you pay more for, and it's got everything underneath it. And eventually I'm going to buy that too.
Two, in addition to having all the individual ones.
Yeah, and then I'll be like, well, I'm just going to cancel all the individual ones, and then there'll be some loophole where it's like, well, you can't do that, but this is more convenient. This thing is called like Net Hulu Spotify or whatever. Realistically, it's just called cable TV. It's like the same thing where all the channels are underneath on cable. You buy it from like Xfinity or whatever, but now there's just going to be like some new form of that for your phone. It's just, I'm tired of subscriptions, but I'm too lazy to cancel them, which is how they win.
Yeah, there's been a lot of apocalyptic and dystopian fiction written over the years, but nobody could have really predicted how stupid the dystopia we live in could have possibly been.
Like, I keep buying YouTube Premium. I don't know why. I buy it and then I cancel it. Because the one feature it has on the phone is you can close the app and YouTube will play in the background. And that costs $15 a month. And that's like kind of nice when I'm watching or listening to something on YouTube Live, but it's not like $15 a month nice. So then I cancel it after like 2 weeks. And then like 2 months later, I'll be like, this is really annoying that when I close this, it doesn't keep playing. And it's just like insane.
That is a horrible rate. That is terrible value.
It costs so much. I seriously don't think YouTube Premium has very many benefits, or it's either YouTube Red or YouTube Premium. I think they rebranded it, but like the benefits of YouTube Premium are very small, and I just keep buying it. That all said, you should all subscribe to Star City Games Premium because it has the best content.
That's some good value, and it's not currently bundled with any other platform, so you know that you are getting what you pay for.
That's a nice tag team mapping there. You could also join the feature match area at twitch.tv/SCG Tour. Also not bundled with anything. And then boom, you get all your SCG value right there. Is that enough shilling, or do we need to do more?
Hey, you're the boss.
I got to get prepared for this weekend in Richmond where we got to fire up the ads. I mean, to be fair, Patrick's going to be reading most of them, but I'm just getting a little prep in. I guess at this stage, we can talk a little bit about Magic since we did a Mythic Championship London preview last week. We're doing a Mythic Championship London review this week. Just drop the P. Easy to title that when I do that later tomorrow. Um, were we good with our predictions?
Good-ish. So kind of the biggest blemish is that one of the decks that we were extremely dismissive of had like the highest win percentage in the field.
Was that Tron?
No, Tron sucked it up. Hardened
Okay, good.
Scales.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And like a bunch of good people played that deck too.
Yeah, I saw that LSV was playing it. Some of the other CFB guys, I think Raptor was, and these are really good players, and that kind of blew my mind. I was happy to see Sperling top 8 with just Frenzy Affinity, even though that deck did quite a bit worse at large.
We'll go over the top 8 decks. I'm actually going to go from 8th place up to 1st, and obviously there's going to be a little bit of overlap here. Javier Dominguez played Is It Phoenix, a deck that I think we both thought was totally fine, and it kind of just struck me as fine. I don't know if this deck is still the best deck, and I don't think these results are indicative of it being anything other than what it is, which is totally fine.
Yeah, I didn't do like an official count, but at a glance, it's one of, if not the most represented deck in the 8-2 or better records.
That's worth noting. And, you know, Javier is obviously a phenomenal Magic player, so seeing him do well with the deck isn't too surprising. I guess I expected a little bit more from the deck. I mean, being in the 8-2 records, I shouldn't really focus so much on the top 8, but I did expect to see a little bit more of it in the top 8 and not so much humans as an example.
Yeah, and there are some lurking variables there. Is It Phoenix? I don't think benefited really from any of the new rules being tried. The London Mulligan, when you talk about a deck like Is It Phoenix that very consistently does its thing or has high access to its divergent game plan through card selection, Serum Visions, Faithful Suiting, that kind of thing, it's not really doing too much of the London Mulligan. And it's also a deck that's mostly just attacking you, setting up where open deck lists don't help you very much there. I'm not really a humans player. You can maybe speak to more how much the London Mulligan helps a deck like humans, but absolutely open deck list does help the Meddling Mage deck.
Yeah, that's obviously huge for the Meddling Mage Kite Self Rebooter deck, but more so Meddling Mage, or just knowing that you need to, I don't want to say you have to mulligan towards Thalia, but you'll know if Thalia is good, or you'll know if Reflector Mage is good in the games that you're playing. And I think that's actually a huge bonus for the deck. You're always trying to mulligan to a 1-drop. My rule is basically you can't keep any hand that doesn't have Vile, Champion of the Parish, or Noble Hierarch. You got to get the party started because this is Modern we're talking about here. So I think that's an advantageous thing as well. But yeah, I mean, obviously when you're the Meddling Mage deck and you can just snipe somebody right away, I think that's a really, really big deal. I do agree with you though. Like, Is It Phoenix doesn't really take advantage of the Mulligan rule or open deck lists all that much. It's just kind of the same deck that it's really always been. I don't expect much to change. Javier's list is pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. Like, you know, he's got the Shatterstorm in the sideboard. He's got Blood Moons in his sideboard. An Alpine Moon for Tron, Ravenous Traps for Dredge, and various graveyard strategies. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary here, even as the Pyromancer's Ascensions, 2 of those. So stock, run-of-the-mill stuff played by a great player, and the deck did well in the tournament, but it definitely wasn't the star of the show this past weekend, I would say.
Yeah, definitely not. And there was a little bit of experimentation in the field. Oliver, too, I believe he went 8-2 with a list that was playing 4 copies of Pyromancer Ascension. A couple other people were on the deck. It seems like everybody that played that version was really big on it. They had 3 copies of Noxious Revival, so it really leaned into that combo side of things. Makes you a little bit more exposed to graveyard hate, but you are kind of more greenlit to do your thing when you are not being hit by that hate.
Yeah, there's a really big lean into Ascension right now for these strategies. I don't know if that continues or not. Like, obviously that deck is good, and that card is good, and that's the best card in the mirror. So if you're expecting a lot of that deck, it's a really big deal. I am curious how good it is against humans and other decks. I think in some games it can be nuts against humans. I think in others it can just be too slow. So that does raise a little bit of curiosity for me.
Yeah, you did see him just kind of lose at least one of his games in his top 8 matches with an Ascension on the table, just not accumulating any counters. And that is a thing that definitely happens in Modern. It's a format where basically every deck, can win the game on turn 4, and sometimes the game's going to be rolled up or even over on the 3rd turn, which makes it tough to get a card like Pyromancer Ascension online.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think this deck will continue to evolve because this is just what that deck has done for a little while, but it's kind of the least exciting thing that really happened in this top 8 to me. So I'm going to move on to, let's see, who got 7th? Chris? Oh boy. I'm going to assume the K is silent. Vartek.
I think that they were saying Kavartek, but I don't know if that's right or not.
All right, Chris. Well, if you're listening, or fans of Chris are listening, I apologize if I blew it. Humans, there are 3 in the top 8? Yeah, 3 in the top 8, including the winner, Eli Loveman, who, he beat me at Grand Prix Memphis when we were both 8-1. I'm a little bitter, but maybe he's better than me since he just won a freaking Mythic championship. Unclear.
That
At this stage.
usually is an indication that he is talented.
I think unclear at this stage. I also played horrible against him, and he played much better than me. But still, I think the jury is out on who is better. Humans is, it's a deck we've seen for 2 years, man. Like, this deck doesn't really change all that much. I guess the addition of Deputy Detention is a pretty big deal, or Deputy of Detention, pardon me, because these humans lists were kind of littered with them, either in their main decks or sideboards. And like BBD's got he's got a couple buglers, which I hate, and a few, and like a couple different numbers, but I'd say like the starting 55 cards are the same, and then people kind of season to taste a little bit with their lists, but we got like this weird convergence of a lot of things going right to make humans, I think, a really good choice for this weekend.
Yeah, humans doesn't change, it waits. And then one week it comes out and it just wins a tournament. I believe that your words for our preview show were you would play humans because it's fine.
Yeah, that's a quote.
Just exactly letter by letter there. And yeah, it's the deck. It just kind of does what it's always done. You have some pretty aggressive draws with your Champion of the Parish, Noble Hierarch kind of starts. You have really powerful disruptive elements. We were talking earlier about how open deck list helps you a lot with both what to name with Meddling Mage. Say if your opponent is just turn 1 uncracked fetch land and you're not really sure what they're playing, well, with open deck lists you do. That also informs the kind of things you want to mulligan towards, etc. Seemed like a really good tournament to be bringing humans to the table.
Let's talk more about this open deck list thing, because Shaheen Sarani, the Esper professor, he did some sort of interview during the Mythic Championship after he won a match with, obviously, a control deck. And he was really, really a big fan of open deck lists with control decks, because now you know what to mulligan for. If you draw the wrong half of your deck, you mulligan for certain cards in the matchup. You need counter magic in one matchup, you mulligan for that, or removal spells against the aggressive decks, whatever. And he really felt that it benefited control in a very, very big way, and that control strategies might actually benefit the most from the new mulligan rule and the new open deck list rule. Do you agree with that?
Not even a little bit. That's kind of lunacy, honestly. That's the sort of thing that someone like Shaheen is going to tell you. Something changes, something's new. Of course this is good for control because I play control and I understand how it helps my control deck. I'm reminded there's a really old adage in Magic. Maybe you know who said it. I'm blanking on who, but it's just kind of accepted as a generally true statement. There's no such thing as a bad threat. There are bad answers. And when it comes to selectively mulliganing to a hand that can threaten your opponents, that can apply pressure, speed the game up, try to close the game, is a very effective thing to do. Whereas if you have open deck lists, it doesn't help the fact that your control deck has 6 blanks in a given matchup. If I know to mulligan away my Fatal Push against your Ad Nauseam deck, I can still draw it for my draw step. That kind of stuff just doesn't get better because you know that it's bad. You still draw it sometimes. Whereas a deck like Humans, hey, guess what? All these creatures have power. They can always attack you, even if my Kitesail Freebooter didn't take a card. I can still put it on the table, exalt it with Noble Hierarch, put a counter on with Thalia's Lieutenant, really apply pressure in a meaningful way. You can't do that with your Spell Pierce against a creature deck.
That's valid. That's valid. I don't think people really looked at it that way. Now I'm thinking about them more. Like in the moment when I heard Shaheen say that, I was like, okay, that all actually kind of adds up. And I think it makes some sense. But at the same time, yeah, like there are still times where it's like, I drew Mana Leak and it's horrible now. Or, I drew Supreme. I still drew my Supreme Verdict or Terminus, and this is not the right matchup for it. I guess that aspect of things does not go away.
I mean, to Shaheen's credit, Shaheen is a very smart guy. He's a good player. And smart people have a way of almost always sounding smart, even when they're wrong. And I think that he's just wrong here.
That's fair. Hey, I like taking a stand. I'm a big fan of that, as you probably know. So it looks like we have beef. We got beef between Shaheen and the turf. We'll have to settle this at some point for sure. I still just don't think control is. I think it's fine. I don't think it got appreciably better. I think they're going to continue to print cards that will make it better, but I don't think it, we don't I don't want to say we don't have any control decks in the top 8. So, it doesn't really, Shaheen's thing doesn't really hold true, but I still think control is just kind of where it's going to be in Modern because it's really hard to go up against all of these different decks with how they attack you from all these different angles.
Yeah, there's definitely just a lot to compete with. There are a couple Azorius control decks, literally 2, in that 8-2 or better record camp. And
oh, you mean white blue control?
I guess I do.
Yeah, this is my pet peeve of the show. How on earth are we calling that deck white blue control, and then we're just happily calling the other deck Is It Phoenix? You literally made a word for it. You literally created a word to describe white and blue, and then you just elect not to use it, but use the one for blue and red.
That's not really even where your complaint should stop either. The ordering, even if you were going to go color, other color, they're showing white first, which suggests to me that white is the primary color here. And I think that they announced it on a broadcast that they do that because it's the first color in color pie order. But that rule sucks. So just don't follow that rule.
Yeah, I don't. When I used to use not the guild names for SCG, and I used to do color order, it was heaviest color, next heaviest color, next heaviest color. So this is a blue white control deck, not a white blue control deck, and this is the madness. Now I'm gonna ramble now. It's like when people used to call the deck black white tokens. It's white black tokens. Not only is it base white, but white also is the lead in the color pie thing. So any argument you make for black first fails. It doesn't work. And it drives me. When I saw white, on the graphic they showed, it was white blue control, right next to Is It Phoenix. And I just wanted to circle it with paint and just go hello? Are we not? Anybody? Is anybody home? No? Am I the only person that's being driven nuts by this? I digress. Please continue your control conversation.
I mean, these decks, they do some proactive, powerful things. Vendilion Click has pretty reasonable closing speed. Jace the Mind Sculptor, Teferi Hero Dominaria, that's a pretty powerful 1-2 punch. The big thing about it, though, is that this deck generally needs to hit more land drops than other decks in the format. And these spells cost twice as much mana as the threats other decks are bringing to the table. So generally, despite the fact that there is some card selection, I think that the Azorius control deck tends to have a higher fail rate than I would like for a modern deck.
The problem I have with Azorius control is actually pretty simple. What broken card are you playing?
Main deck Surgical Extraction, Phyrexian Mana. Ever heard of it?
I have, and it's good. But the deck doesn't play any of the broken cards in Modern. It doesn't play Stirrings. It doesn't play Looting. It doesn't play Vile. It doesn't play Mox. What's your advantage? A question that I learned from one Michael Jacob, which was what's your nut draw? And if my nut draw involves Celestial Colonnade,
4 lands. hieroglyphic illuminations.
Yeah. Like, what's your nut draw? Where are your free wins at? And I just feel like Azorius Control has no free W's, especially game one. If you want to make the argument that, like, Rest in Peace or Stony Silence are your free W's after sideboard and you play more sideboarded games than pre-sideboarded games, sure, I guess. I mean, I'm not willing to buy that very much. Like, I think decks like this frustrate me because you're working so hard to win when other decks can just like mulligan a 5 and they're like, derp derp, faithless looting, see you later, nerd. And that just takes care of it.
I had a weird viewing experience with this Mythic Championship. I like to watch things live, and obviously I'm not on London time. So the broadcast started like 2 or 3 in the morning my time. And so I was kind of napping on and off, where I would drift in and out of consciousness. I would wake up, get part of a match, verify that they were featuring Tron again every round. And there was one match where I wake up, I think it was round 5, and there's just a player casting main deck Rest in Peace. And I wasn't sure if I was awake or just having the dumbest dream I've ever had in my life.
If those are your dreams, we've got larger problems here. It involves main deck Rest in Peace and you remembering it. My man, it's time to move on and do something else with your life. Enough of this. No more magic, please.
That shows that I care and that my brain knows how to torment me for caring, I guess.
That is true. That's not a good thing to... That's just not good. It's just not good. Humans obviously won the tournament, and credit to Eli Loveman, credit to all the Humans players out there for playing your totally fine deck, as I described it last week. So, Tron, so 2 copies in the top 8, didn't win the tournament. Were we technically right or wrong or somewhere in between?
I think somewhere in between. There is actually some pretty conflicting data when you look at the tournament breakdown. Tron was the most played deck. It had a negative convergence rate. It fell off in percentage of the field going into day 2. And the breakdown, the win rate on the weekend for Tron was under 50%. It was 47.7%. It is surprising to me that the most popular deck in the field, the deck that people were really drawn to, wasn't even putting up 50%.
I feel the same way. I think, I don't even know. How do I want to start this? Is this the best deck for the London Mulligan rule? I'm not even convinced that's true. I think that's the first question you have to ask is weirdly, maybe Humans is the best deck for the London Mulligan rule. Maybe not, because, obviously the goal of Tron is to assemble A plus B plus C plus D, which lends itself to being better for that rule. But, Tron, I think that Humans is really good with the London Mulligan rule in combination with open deck lists, which isn't always going to be the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it's just a question of is this actually the deck that takes advantage of the London Mulligan rule the best? Because I don't think it's a deck that takes advantage of the open deck list rule the best in Tron.
No, certainly not.
If we think this is the best London Mulligan rule deck, okay, it makes sense why it was so heavily played. And I guess, the deck does get it does have nut draws and it gets its free wins and it is relatively consistent. But I also just kind of think to myself, with these win percentage numbers that you're talking about here and are citing are so in line with just what I think about Tron, which is it's good, not great.
I think that if you identify Tron as the best deck on the weekend, you have to have a pretty good reason to join them, because if you identify Tron as having a target on its head and you can't beat it, there's something you are fundamentally missing about the modern format. Tron is one of the most eminently beatable decks represented in the Mythic Championship field. So many of these decks, is it Phoenix, Dredge, Amulet Titan, they're asking your opponent to have specific kinds of hate, whereas the Tron deck is the only deck that will just roll over if you can present a fast kill.
And that's not even bringing hate into the equation.
Yeah, and you can also have hate on top of that.
Yeah. Which is, that's very real, I think. There are, it's kind of conflicting about, who wins in the Tron versus Humans matchup. I actually think it's, a very, very close matchup, and, both sides kind of have to mulligan for various things, and I've always found it to be extremely close, but there are draws where just human just goes like champion Thalia or like champion Lieutenant Mantis Ride or something like that, and it's like, oh well, like my thing that I have is just not good this game if I'm Tron, or it's too slow, or like I didn't have turn 3 Tron right away. And that's the other thing about the deck that I think is maybe not talked about enough. This is the deck in a lot of matchups, especially in Modern, where if you don't have Tron on turn 3, like it's just unacceptable. Now, it obviously completes Tron a lot on turn 3 because that's the goal of the deck, and the London Mulligan actually helps to ensure that a lot more. But in my experiences of playing Tron a handful of years ago and watching it over the past handful of years, like there's too many games where it's just like, well, Forest, that's that. Just all set now. Just too slow. Getting my teeth kicked in, or just wasn't fast enough with my Karn or my Ugin or whatever. And then the game is just kind of over. I was surprised when I found out this was the most played deck. I really was. Maybe that's me being naive, and all these great players have just found that like this is really good, but the numbers don't really seem to back it up.
I don't know if it was that they found out it was really good. I think that there was some kind of bias that was not corrected for. I remember there was some writing on the wall leading up to the tournament. Andrea Mengucci was tweeting a lot about losing to Tron and hating Tron, and I'm like, aren't you supposed to be like really good? Like you just won the Mythic Invitational, like a platinum level pro, and you just can't beat the 3 land combination deck. Like, what's even going on here? And part of it is that when you have to dedicate so much time to limited, even for this tournament, you're learning a new limited format that nobody's even played before. That's a pretty daunting task. And when you spend most of your time playing standard, you're really kind of behind when it comes to playing modern. If you don't enjoy modern, it's really tough to get in the reps to compete with the people that do, just because it's being played on every level of competition just all the time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think this deck, like you said, is just like if Tron, let's say that Tron won the tournament or something, right? And a lot of the time in Magic, a deck wins a tournament, and then you're just like, I'm going to play that deck because it just won this tournament. Like if Tron had won this tournament, I was going to a modern tournament this weekend. You bet your ass I wouldn't even consider playing Tron. People are gonna, here come the sowing salts and the crumbles, and just like every just jackass card that beats Tron are just coming out of the woodwork. And let me tell you, because I've been on the other side of that before at a Grand Prix, you are gonna be mad when it's over.
Oh yeah, there are people that are just happy to register Fulminator Mage in their main deck. There's some people that just main deck Ghost Quarter. You can't beat a Ghost Quarter. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, these Ghost Quarter surgical things, like people will just, here's my main deck Blood Moon, just all of this stuff. It's like, you know what? I just don't even want to play this tournament anymore. I guess ultimately, not to belabor the point, like this Tron's performance this weekend was very much in line with what I would think it would do, which is it's fine, it's powerful, it can put players in the top 8. I still can't see this deck winning a tournament that matters. It's obviously not impossible. Any deck can win a tournament, but it's just like when I saw 2 in the top 8, I'm just like, Alexander Haynes insane. He's an amazing Magic player. I'd be shocked if we won the tournament because like this deck just doesn't strike me as the type of deck that wins tournaments, and the win percentage or the win rate just isn't that high. It's a fine deck and it's definitely powerful. And I know a lot of people have been posting about like the inclusion of new Ugin and new Karn and everything, which I'll be curious to see how those shake out when we like cover a modern tournament or look at some classics.
Yeah, the new cards are something, but Tron really never changes in a fundamental way. It's really similar to how you get new cards for Burn sometimes, and Burn is sort of this deck that's always a turn 4 deck. Sometimes it'll get you on turn 3. Sometimes Tron just kind of curves Karn into Ulamog, and you're not going to win those games with most decks. It's just not realistic. But just enough of the time, it's just the fact that the deck can't really win before turn 4, and often will be pushed back even later than that. It's never going to be oppressive or dominant in the format.
Speaking of decks that can't win before turn 4, Titan Shift, huh?
Yeah, this one really surprises me.
How do you pronounce his first name? I can't. Is it Tien?
I believe it's Tien.
Okay, so I see this name all the time, Tien Win, and I know he's been playing Titan Shift, forever. and generally does well. Top 8 some Grand Prix, if memory serves, and top 16s and 32s tournaments, and always playing the same deck. And his list always varies, never really stays the same, which is good. You should always try new stuff. Um, these Acid Moss's main deck are bold, I would say. Um, but I guess if Tron is the most played deck, then you were very smart. So well done. Uh, I played Titan Shift in a Grand Prix last year in Phoenix. Yeah, I'm good. I'm just all I got that out of my system. It was when Bloodbraid got unbanned. And I was like, oh man, everyone's gonna play Jund. This is gonna be so sweet. So that's not what happened at all. I just played against other things, unfortunately, and just got my clock cleaned a bunch, mostly in day 2. I played against I think Andrew Walbers is a Minnesota guy.
Yeah, he won. He's a Minnesota guy. He won a Dallas Open with Ponza.
Yeah, how do you think that went for me?
Did you destroy your lands and you weren't able to do anything? Maybe
lot.
Blood Moon Valakut?
Yeah.
Can't beat that one.
I played against that matchup twice in a row in Phoenix, and I was just like, yeah, I'm good. Like this deck, I'm so shocked that Tien did well with this deck. Obviously, he's played the deck a ton, but I look at Titan Shift and I'm like, why would you do this when you can just play Amulet? I just don't understand.
It's pretty low maintenance, I think, is the big draw. You put your Scape Shift, your Primeval Titan, your 100 mountains, your ramp spells. I think that the strength of Tien's deck and his approach to the tournament is in these flex slots. Tron was very popular. Main deck Acid Moss. It's already a matchup that they probably have to Karn you early and often to even claw out a win. You kind of eliminate the chance that they do that with those Acid Mosses. The Lightning Bolts is going to help you a lot against humans. You have Engineered Explosives there to supplement any kind of Meddling Mage lock you might be under. Main deck Relic of Progenitus is going to buy you a lot of points against Dredge and Is It Phoenix. So it's all these flex slots. I'm not impressed by Sakura Tribe Elder, never have been, never will be. But these flex slots, I think, give the deck the opportunity to make the game last until turn 4 or 5 when you can actually scape shift people.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is as straightforward as they come. You're not going to see anything special here. Like, the flex spots can vary a bunch. You know, you can play Explores or more Chandras or some different 4-drops or like different cards to find with Summoner's Pact if you want to get creative with like a copy of, I don't know, Wood Elves or something, some other nonsense green creature, an Obstinate Baloth, what have yous. And then the sideboard, I think correctly, is a lot of 2s and 1s, which is what Tien has here because he knows his deck so well. But, you know, if I'm not Tien, I'm not really going to play this deck. Like, this just seems like a passion project more than like a viable option.
Yeah, you can't deny that he is committed to this strategy. And to be fair, there has been a copy of Scape Shift in, I think, every recent Grand Prix for the last however many months. It has been putting up fairly consistent results, which I don't really see the draw to the deck. It's a deck that I generally play Is It Phoenix, surprise, the Steam Vent deck. And decks like Tron and Titan Shift, in my experience, I felt pretty favored. Not generally too worried about my opponent leading on turn 1 Valakut or turn 2 Urza's Tower. But your flex slots, like your main deck Relic Progenitus, those can buy you some points there. And the people that play those decks, the Tron players, the Titan Shift players I talk to, they all seem to believe that they're favored against Phoenix. So maybe the match is just even or close to even.
I could see close to even, I guess. I don't know. That's the thing about like the Phoenix matchup is that like the Phoenix player is going to get to do their thing, and then like if they have anything in their sideboard to beat a Titan Shift player, like, they're going to find it and then just do that thing a high percentage of the time because of how their deck is constructed. Where Titan Shift is just like, how do the top 12 cards of my deck look? And I'm just not terribly comfortable with that, I guess. To say that like my deck would beat a cantrip deck just kind of feels dishonest to me.
The Phoenix deck doesn't really interact with Titan Shift that well. Typically, what you'll see is Blood Moon or, as you mentioned, Alpine Moon is an option, but 10 just boards in that Reclamation Sage. You have your Summoner's Pact. I guess he's only on 2 Summoner's Pacts, but that's reasonably high access, and they have to draw the Blood Moon in the first place. It is really mostly just a race that I think that Phoenix is on average ahead in the race.
I think it's a race, but I also think like if you're playing Phoenix and you want to sideboard something to beat specifically Titan Shift, like a couple of cards that aren't Blood Moon, like I don't know what that card is.
You
like,
can put like 1 or 2 Disdainful Strokes, and that helps the matchup a lot.
Yeah, that seems like that's the kind of card where you're doing your thing, and then they like go for their haymaker, and you're like, yeah, stroke it because my deck cantrip, so I obviously found one, and I'm gonna attack you with Thing in the Ice and finish the game off now, right? That's what feels like would happen a high percentage of the time, and also like I don't know, Titan Shift. I mean, it doesn't mulligan a ton in my experience, but it does mulligan, and not
poorly.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a ramp deck, and Is It Phoenix is like, yo, my deck cantrips, so if I have to mulligan, it's fine. It's totally fine. If I had to guess, I would say that Is It Phoenix is slightly favored, and maybe even more than that. But congratulations, Tianwen, for doing your thing with the deck you've been playing forever. And now we go to Mr. Sick of It himself, one Matthew Q. Sperling, with his deck from 1984. In just Affinity with a couple copies of Experimental Frenzy. I'm a little surprised, I'll be honest. Like, this is like paging Alex Magleton. I need an Affinity deck, and this is what he'd give you, except for the bent frog mites. Like, got your Steel Overseers, got your Ravagers, got your Cranial Platings, a couple Welding Jars, not a lot of Master Ethereums. I like the exclusion of Etched Champion because it's just not good right now for the most part. And then, a couple copies of Experimental Frenzy, which I've never played with Frenzy Affinity before, but, I get it. Like, if you get a Frenzy on the battlefield, you're just going to go full-blown crazies, and so that's cool. But, like, this deck it's just a full-blown blast from the past, dude.
Yeah, Affinity is a deck that I think just generally has done reasonably at every Mythic Championship, Pro Tour of the modern format, because you still are playing the most popular card, or the most powerful card in Modern. You're still a Mox Opal deck. That's your floor.
Ooh, you think that's the most powerful card?
It's not a matter of opinion. It's a Mox. What's the competition?
I thought you'd say Faithless Looting.
I think that Faithless Looting is actually more bannable than Mox Opal, because if you are playing Mox Opal, your deck is generally easier to hate out, because Faithless Looting is good with cards, whereas Mox Opal is good with a certain threshold of a specific card type, of which many very powerful hate cards that even stuff main deckable that can really just kind of ruin your day. So I think Mox Opal is more powerful but more beatable.
Okay. All right. I buy it.
Anyway, Affinity is really good. And I think that this deck benefits quite a bit from the London Mulligan. Not so much that it's a deck that's great at winning on fewer cards, but rather it's a deck with really explosive opening hands that has to mulligan a fair amount, just because you really need a mix of some kind of fast mana, a payoff, and some cogs, where I imagine that your 6-card hands get quite a bit better just getting that extra look rather than a scry after you keep 6. And your 5-card hands probably improve by a fair margin as well. And it's a deck that, sometimes, you work on a new Modern deck, and there's an idea of what the metagame should look like. Recently it's been on the SCG Tour, you can expect to play against a lot of Amulet Titan, a lot of Is It Phoenix, there's the control holdouts, humans, and then you just queue into Affinity, and they play their turn 1 Steel Overseer that you don't have a removal spell for, and just like kill you on turn 3 with their Cranial Plating, and you're like, oh yeah, that deck is still kind of busted.
I'm trying to remember, like, what caused this deck to just fall off the map. It just flat disappeared. And like, this is before Experimental Frenzy even got in the deck. It's just like, yeah, I guess we're just not seeing Cranial Platings or anything. Everyone kind of converted to Hardened Scales Affinity, which I think maybe because Hardened Scales has Hangerback Walker and Walking Ballista, Like, it probably beats regular affinity, but I mean, this deck just
I think
disappeared.
that the most horrifying thing for an affinity player is Benjamin Nikolic. And I think that the period when he was really on a tear with Jeskai really pushed Affinity out of the format, the more popular that deck became, because that's a nightmare matchup for Affinity.
That one's no fun. No argument here. It isn't. It is worth noting that, like, if you think about it, like, what kind of affinity hate was running around at this tournament? You're not. It's not like people are loading up on Stony Silence anymore. Everyone. I mean, these maniacs have main deck surgical extraction. Like, we're not worried about artifacts so much. So if that was Sperling's thought process of there's no Stonies, like there's no Electrolyzes, there's no Benjamin Nikolic Jeskai decks out there, people are just, they're gearing up for hardened scales maybe a little bit. And to beat hardened scales is different than trying to beat normal affinity, maybe as a thought process. Because, I mean, Matt got second place in this tournament. He almost won this Pro Tour with a deck that is a blast from the past.
Yeah, and in humans, I actually played Affinity at the Milwaukee Open last year. I ended up losing rounds 8 and 9 to Stony Silence in both sideboard games in both rounds, and that's just something that happens when Affinity is a known quantity, but that really wasn't happening at this tournament. The reason that I chose Affinity for that tournament was Humans was the most popular deck in Modern, and that's a matchup that Affinity, I think, is generally pretty favored in. The Deputy of Detentions, they definitely come into play in a way that tips the scales a bit in Humans' favor. Definitely something to look out for if you're trying to play Affinity. I don't recall in the final game if Sperling was on a 6-card hand or if it was a 7, but I remember his hand was pretty weak and he just got destroyed by his Staticaster as well.
Oh, that'll happen.
Yeah, there's not a ton you can do about that outside of just getting ahead of it with an Arcbound Ravager.
Yeah, I think like the matchup for Humans against Affinity, because this is when I was playing Humans a lot. I think it was like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Can't remember at this point. Like, you have to care, you have to dedicate stuff to beat it. And right now, like, I definitely agree with you. Deputy is a real thing, which I didn't have access to before because it's a newer card. But you had to play like some gut shots and a couple other cards, like multiple copies of Staticaster, and not so much Vythian Renegades. But this was also when Humans was playing like Reclamation Sage instead, and then Phantasmal Imaging it. But like the Humans list that we have seen, especially in this top 8, like they're loaded up on like Auriok Champions and caring about different decks and different stuff, which makes sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if at this particular tournament, Sperling felt his Humans matchup was good because people just didn't have stuff.
They harped on this a bit on coverage of the tournament. Sperling, in a capacity that Loveman heard him say it, referred to the matchup as a bye, and then lost it in the finals.
Well, Matt is a little boisterous. I love Matt. He can be a little boisterous sometimes. I mean, to his credit, I'm taking a look at Loveman's sideboard. There's like a Staticaster, Whirler Rogue, which I would board in because it makes Thopters that fly, Dismembers, which are good, a Deputy Detention. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yeah, I mean, 5 cards in the sideboard. I mean, that's not nothing, but these aren't like Reclamation Sages or anything. And Dismember is probably the best of the bunch. Maybe the Deputy Detention is, but I could see why Matt feels the way that he felt.
Yeah, and
makes some sense.
I also understand talking trash about the Human strategy. It's a deck that I know that I undervalue, but part of it is that I know that I would never play it.
And that is why we are different people. Because it is a deck that I overvalue, and it's the only deck I'll play in Modern.
You get both sides of the truth on this podcast.
Give me my people and my sleeves. Let's go to work. Well, that's the top 8. I'm taking a look at one of the articles here on Daily MTG that Karsten wrote, and there are like some interesting decks in here. Mark Jacobson went 8-2 with his mono red Eldrazi deck that I saw on camera one of the rounds.
Yeah, that deck was rad.
Yeah, so like this is kind of what you were talking about in the preview, where like you were kind of in the mono white Eldrazi with Displacer, and like Mark went the mono red route, but it's all like kind of the same-ish thing. Yeah,
and you can cast your Simian Spirit Guides.
Oh yes, yes you can. You can kill your opponent with Ramming Up Ruins apparently too,
Yes, a lot of upside.
which I got to see him do that. So that was a. This is the kind of deck where like so one of the things I like about Mark is he'll play anything.
Mm.
Like this goes back to the like for me last week the paper in front of me and the sleeves and it's like does anybody have any copies of Wastes? And it's like I never mind. I'm not playing this deck. Forget it. Like I just can't do it. But Mark will kind of just play anything, and I do think that your thought process last week of London Mulligan for Eldrazi Temple is a very real thing.
Yep. And this is also a deck that gets to get extra looks at a hand that has Simian Spirit Guide, Chalice of the Void in the opener, or if you're on the draw, some of those Gemstone Caverns. Chalice of the Void is one of the most powerful things you can do against Izzet Phoenix, and it comes into play in a ton of other matchups as well.
It's really good against Tron.
Yeah, turns off their Ancient Stirrings, Expedition map if you have it on the first turn. The Chromatic Stars and Spheres, yeah, it can be really impactful in that matchup.
Yeah, and I imagine he's got Blood Moons probably, right? You two in the board. I imagine this matchup's probably good for Mark anyway, the Tron matchup. Or it's at least fine.
Yeah, I generally think that decks like this, depending on how your opening hand ends up, if you don't have to mulligan too much, you can come out of the gates really quickly. Turn one Eldrazi Mimic is not a huge ask for the deck, and Serum Powder Eternal Scourge can kind of make up, so it's pretty likely that you have at least that on the second turn and can shape up the battlefield that way. Thought Not Seer is a huge card in basically every matchup. That card is just really, really good. I can definitely see this deck being a really reasonable choice for the modern format. I'm a little bit skeptical of going with 3 Dismember as the removal suite for the main deck. I would maybe like to see. I guess you can't really play Lightning Bolt because you're playing Chalice of the Void, so maybe that is just the only thing you can do.
I think it's the only thing you can do reliably.
Yeah. It costs a lot of life, which is my issue, but you do want some removal spells anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think it's just kind of the only thing that you can do and be happy with. And there are some risk involved. Maybe you shave a little bit of those life points off with these copies of Sulphurous Springs.
Make black mana save a life.
So there's a Cheerio strategy here that went 7-3 in Modern.
Ooh.
This is a deck that like I've secretly had on the back burner of my brain. If I were to actually play Magic at any point and it mattered, and I've always just kind of felt like, hey, if everyone forgets about this deck, could really go 11-4 in a GP.
I could just have that min cash.
Yeah, I could lock that in 12-3 if I'm really running good. I don't even know what makes this deck better as far as like a new card is concerned, because you have to play all of these horrible equipment in this strategy to go along with SRAM and Pure Steel, and then the 4 retracts, and then like your win conditions. I only think this deck is super good if people just like don't have stuff or forget it's a thing. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, this deck has it doesn't really even have lopsided matchups, because part of the problem with this deck is that it has a pretty significant fail rate. So I guess kind of what you're approaching the format here and the tournament here with is the fact that the London Mulligan is going to help you more consistently be able to recover from mulliganing, because you generally just kind of go off if you have one of your SRAM or your Pure Steel Paladin and like 2 equipment is generally a fine starting point. You can typically go off from there. I remember playing against this deck. It first showed up when I was still playing, those 4 Spell Snare decks. And this is really as close to a buy as a deck of Magic cards could have gotten.
This is during your peak Spell Snare days?
Yeah, this was at peak Snare.
Yeah, then you didn't lose to this deck ever.
No.
When people so I think this deck is just like unplayable if Thoughtseize is a card that people are casting, but it's not a thing that people are really playing right now.
Yeah, there's not too much of that. There's a little bit of Golgari in the field, a little bit of Jund, but it's not too much. Most of the format is going to be Tron, Izzet Phoenix, Dredge. Those matchups all seem pretty reasonable for the Cheerios deck.
There was some Shadow, and like Shadow had a 45% win rate, which is actually worse than Tron's win rate. I know that like Ben Friedman and the Shadow entourage had a really bad tournament. Um, but like again, like to me, I can't think of the card or cards that get printed where it's like, oh no, Cheerios is really good now, because it just feels like there's not a lot of moving parts here.
None of the cards that would make this deck better are reasonable to print. Like, what kind of effect that is possibly printable would make this deck better?
I don't have the slightest idea, but I agree with you.
What if they made a 0-mana equipment that naturally drew a card?
Yeah.
It's nothing. It's a pretty shallow well.
Yeah, I don't really know what that card would be. The only thing that stands out to me in this deck list that is humorous are the 3 Chameleon Colossus in the sideboard, because that is just some wishful thinking.
Yeah, what the heck is that about?
there's 4 Horizon Canopies in the main. There's a couple of fetches. There are 2 Temple Gardens in the board, and new plan. Like, I guess suit up a Colossus with the shields and the saw, and like
This is
get
how
to work
we.
on somebody.
This is how we beat the Jun deck.
I mean, I guess if they don't draw Liliana, it's fine.
I just don't even understand why that's so many slots.
I know.
It's not just the Colossus. There's also just 2 lands that tap for green and white mana in the sideboard.
Yeah, dude, fire up. I can just imagine just move all my equipment to the Colossus. Put the saw. You have to pay to equip the saw? Come on.
Bonesaw is the only equipment that modifies power in the selection.
Well, that's a really tough Chameleon Colossus. Look, that is wishful thinking to say the least there, Luke Mulkey, however you pronounce your last name. Congrats on your 7-3. Those Chameleon Colossus. If Luke has some sort of story about that, I hope he tweets at me, because I'd like to hear that. My Chameleon Colossus was a 4-9, and it mattered. Okay.
I would like to see photographic evidence of this card being anything other than a massive liability in wasted sideboard space.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. So that's like it, pretty much it for the for my MC kind of review, just with regards to decks and stuff like that. Anything else stand out to you about the MC deck wise, or where Modern is potentially going before we talk about the other topic at hand? Dun dun dun.
It's really tough to say too much about what this tournament means for Modern, with both the fact that Open Deck List seems to have had a significant impact on how things played out, and we at this point in time don't know if the London Mulligan will be adapted, which I really hope that it is. I think it's a great rule. Another lurking variable is have you seen that stupid Eldritch Evolution deck that Canister has been streaming with?
Yeah, okay, I've got some thoughts on this. I didn't know if it was going to come up. We got some we're in overreaction theater right now.
Yep.
Like Nexus of Drake Sasser, he like posted a photo on Twitter that was just like, all right, we need to ban this hashtag Wizards help or something, and it's like, okay, man, let's just settle down.
Right.
Let's just take a breath. I get that this deck is a deck that's trying to abuse the London Mulligan rule, but it's just like, all right, Thoughtseize, you just go away, kindly leave, or like play a Grafdigger's Cage. Your deck does not function. Like, I'm not listening to this yet. Do I think this could be a good deck? Yeah, I do. But like, let's all just take a collective breath, which the Magic community does not like to do.
Yeah, I definitely saw somebody invoke the phrase emergency ban, which, like, somebody going 3-2 in a league is not the burden of proof necessary for that kind of action.
Put it away. It's time for it to go. That's too many 3-2s in Modern. It's time to shut her down. Like,
that's just a free treasure chest anytime anybody plays the deck. Not okay.
It's going to ruin the economy on Magic Online, which is already in total shambles. We need to fix this.
Before anybody comes at me, yeah, the deck might be broken, but I don't have any meaningful data, and so I'm going to crack wise, because that's what I do.
I mean, I don't know. Like, give me some proof that deck can beat a Thoughtseize or a Grafdigger's Cage, or a person who cares to beat the deck,
Yeah, I don't know. It
right?
feels
Like,
like it like has some turn one wins, but like how many? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, also like the stupid, what's it called? The stupid like Grishel brand decks also have like turn one and turn two wins, and that deck is hot garbage.
True.
It is just not. I mean, everyone. Todd Anderson, God bless him, he's tried so much to win with that deck, and Todd is great at Magic, and it's like that deck just it just ain't it. And I mean, with all these main deck surgicals now too, it's definitely not it. But just that deck has been around forever with just like a derp doo. I can play Grizzlebrand and kill you on turn one or two, and it just doesn't happen. It
Yep.
just doesn't happen.
That
I
is
understand
true.
that this Neo form deck doesn't use the graveyard. It's a little bit different, but I still think the point remains that this could be something, like you said, but I gotta see it first.
I'm gonna dust off the spell snares is what I'm gonna do.
I like it. You're ready. You're ready for these
I am
people.
ready.
One blue. See you later. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, depending on who you ask, I don't even know how to approach this, but I think it is worth talking about. We had a real unique situation take place at the Mythic Championship London, where Yuya Watanabe was, I guess, drew into the top eight. They did a little deck check on him, and the sleeves did not come back great, and he got disqualified. And now, if you follow such things on Twitter, you have seen pictures of the sleeves, which don't look great. And I think this is much different than anything I think we've seen in the Magic community in a long time, because like I think Yuya was just kind of generally loved for his like mystique and ability to play the game and all this other stuff. Where a lot of the time when stuff like this happens, it's like, oh yeah, well, like f that guy, I knew he cheated or whatever, and everyone just is like this like angry mob of people, and instead it's just like, no, Yuya, no. But I think the answer is yes.
It is really hard to stomach because, as you mentioned, he's so beloved, and also he's just so good. Like sometimes it comes out that somebody's a big cheater, and you're like, well, obviously they have these results. They're not even good at all. Of course they were cheating. But Yuya is just like really good, and then also this thing comes out, and I think that the evidence presented is just really damning. It's really just too much to overcome at this point. I see a lot of people that are really resistant to believe it. I understand that, but I think that it's just not reasonable. At first, when Rich Hagan makes the announcement in the middle of a broadcast, which is more than you usually get when a player is disqualified, it wasn't just the main broadcast mentions the disqualification. Rich also goes into the fact there's 12 sleeves that are marked. They're all Tron lands, all three Tron lands. Specifically, the towers are all marked the same. Power plants and mines are 3/4 the same, with one mark mismatched on all of them. All the other sleeves are fine, which is already just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like that announcement is huge. The fact that it's in the middle of the broadcast, you didn't have to delve anywhere for it. And then people are just like, well, let me see pictures. It's just like, okay, Jeff, whatever the Hardy Boys is. I named the Hardy Boys like the wrestler, but I meant like the books. I don't know. Nancy Drew. Oh, right. You get your inspector cap or whatever. Like Junior Detective is going to figure out something that the best judges staff, the people that do this, try to determine foul play here, don't do. And now we do have the pictures, and they actually look worse than what I was expecting.
Yeah, they actually look a million times worse than I was expecting to. Just like these clear cut, like fingernail engravings. It's like, God, like give me something where I'm just like, I don't know. I think you guys are reaching here, and it's like, no, I can't even trick my mind into going like, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
And then you see those 12 sleeves that everyone's like, well, show us the rest of the sleeves. And then they did that too, which they didn't have to do. And now it's just like, it just gets worse all the time. And you still see some people saying, well, I don't know. Maybe he didn't do it. He's such a nice guy. I think there's a problem with thinking about the world and people like that. You want to believe that there's evil people and righteous people, good and bad. The reality is there's better and worse. Every person has better and worse days. You do some bad shit, I do some bad shit. This was some bad shit that you did.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that take at all. In my heart of hearts, I wish that I could, because I mean, I'm not the only one. I think, like I said, generally the competitive Magic community really likes Yuya, but I actually am looking at the pictures of the sleeves right now, and it's like, hey man, we got to talk about these sleeves because this ain't great. And the fact that it is like 3 towers and 3 mines and stuff, it's just like, all right, so like, if I was a judge in that spot, and I'm not a judge, obviously, like if it's just, maybe if like it's just me, I like want to pull him aside and be like, all right, so like you give me your best story about this. Like, try really hard because like I want to believe you, I do, and I can't, and that's a lot. That's just a lot. Because this evidence is like so damning, and like I wasn't even interested in putting on like the Nancy Drew hat and being like, I want to see the sleeves, because it's like, fuck what I want. Like, these are judges that are very good at what they do, and if like they made this call, then that's the call, and I trust their judgment, because if we don't trust their judgment, then our tournaments lack integrity. So if this was the call they made, like I believe them, and we got all these additional steps that we didn't even deserve to get with like the showing of sleeves and the showing of the deck. And then for someone to continue to go like, well, like you said, I don't know. It's like, well, unfortunately, I think we do know. And it's just like, you don't want to believe it, but you can't not.
That was another thing I heard some people say was like, judges get calls wrong all the time. And it's like the L1 that you asked about your commander game regarding opalescence and humility is not in the same ballpark of this kind of question. This is the sort of thing that they took very seriously. They examined, re-examined. And this is also the kind of thing that is very bad publicity for Wizards of the Coast, a Hasbro subsidiary, to have a member of the Magic Pro League booted from one of your premier events. Like, this was not a decision that was made lightly. They thought about this very hard. They looked at this very closely, and the evidence is really just damning.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point too, because I was thinking the same thing, which is, like they're not making this decision at random. I think in some portion, like everyone kind of knows what's at stake here, which is they're trying to establish this game as like an esport and as like a big deal that you want to be involved in for various reasons: the fame, the money, the prizes, the travel, whatever. And like a very valued member of a very specific community, be it the Japanese Magic players and community, and also just being one of the best players of all time and is in the Hall of Fame. So he represents a lot of different aspects of your game. Yeah, like I imagine if like I put the truth serum in the judges or the people who matter in like organized play and be like, yeah, we don't want to disqualify him, but like, what choice do we have? We can't ignore this.
Yeah. And I don't know where it goes from there. That's definitely outside of the kind of call that I make. Not my department, but minimally the disqualification was very much justified.
Yeah, I agree. I think I just don't think they have a choice. I think they have to disqualify him and do their investigation and everything else. I think that's all things that they should do. I think you also now have to take a look at Yuya's past history, and I'm not in the trenches like a lot of players are, but I know that like I haven't really heard of any negative stories about Yuya, and I've played against Yuya in a couple of events, and it was a very pleasurable experience of him kicking my ass, because that's what he did to most people when playing Magic, because he was so good. But now you have to weigh everything and put everything under the scrutiny light. And does this mean he's removed from the MPL? Again, that's not my call to make, much like it's not yours. But like, if they opt to make that call, it wouldn't surprise me, and I can't necessarily say it's the wrong one. It doesn't mean there's not a road back to. It doesn't mean there's not like a road to rehabilitation or gaining the trust of the community again or anything like that. I'd like to think that people are open-minded enough to think that that's a realistic thing that can happen. But where things currently stand at 11:22 p.m. on April 30th in Seattle, Washington, Yuya Watanabe is not in a great spot. at least in my eyes.
Yeah, definitely. This is not something that I expect him to immediately bounce back from. I agree with the notion people are capable of redemption, but it generally involves taking a step back, reflecting, and changing behaviors, not just jumping right back to what you were doing and expecting people to accept you.
Yeah, I agree. This is unfortunate. It's weird. It's weird, right? Like, it's unfortunate because I wanted to believe a thing, but like, there's also a part of me that's just like, I don't know if this person's been cheating a bunch or something. I'm glad this happened. Like, it's a weird two sides of a coin that I don't know how to like evaluate, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely net positive to catch somebody, stop them in the act. Definitely net negative to find out that somebody is so beloved, was caught in behavior like this. This is definitely a bad scene. So, I mean, it's just some give and take there. Not something that's generally the worst thing that could have happened. It's definitely not the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah, it's a thing that happened. It is a thing that happened. You are not going to be in Richmond this weekend, as you said last week. You're
Correct.
going to be watching Richmond. That's what you're going to be doing.
I gotta take notes to prepare for the city that y'all won't go to.
The Cuse is loose. um, we'll be heading to Richmond this weekend. Myself, Patrick Sullivan, Brian Gottlieb, Jerry Thompson, Nick Miller, and the rest of the crew to get ready to watch a little bit of War of the Spark Standard. And that should be kind of interesting. I played it for the first time yesterday. The format looks pretty cool. Do you have any recommendations as far as a deck or anything like that before we call it quits on this episode of the podcast?
I haven't looked too much at what other people are doing. The first thing that I did, this is only something I've been playing with the last couple days, is I just cut some cards, change some peripheral elements to put the new Saheeli into Is It Drake's. Surprise! Put some cards in the Is It deck. Still gonna play it.
Oh, Steve Metz guy. Nice.
If you want to do that kind of thing, I recommend adding some red cantrips to your deck. I think that you want to play crash throughs and ops because you want to cast as many spells as you can as fast as you can when you untap with a Saheeli. I haven't figured out if that's a good thing to be doing or the best way to do it if it is, but Crackling Drake's still good, so how bad could it be?
It can't be that bad.
Yeah, it's a
Still pretty good deck.
good 11-4 kind of strategy.
Ooh, bread and butter. Bread and butter finish. I will say that I got destroyed a lot by Nicol Bolas Dragon God.
Sure.
Card seems fairly pushed on purpose because of the storyline.
Yeah.
And it would just be really weird to me if that card's not good. So I know a lot of people are like, Simic Nexus or Nexus of Fate strategies, so on and so forth, and that makes some sense to me. But I think that card is like, it's hard-ish to cast, but once it's on the battlefield, it's like, geez, this thing. Are you kidding me with this card?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a card that does well this weekend.
Yeah, it's super good, and also you just get to play Angrass Rampage, which is a card that I thought was a rare. Like, that card is just good against everything, right?
It strikes me as good against everything. In my one day of playing. Oh, I will say this, by the way, for every person that has just been like, I don't know how often you're going to use their Planeswalker's ability. Spoiler, it's a lot. It's a lot because it happened a lot on the day that I was playing yesterday. And I will admittedly say I only played like 9 matches and it happened in like 4 of them. And I was like, oh my God. And it's like, don't you just kill the Planeswalker? I don't know. Sometimes.
Were you?
And then sometimes you ruin your opponent.
You were playing with or against the Nicol Bolas?
Against a lot and losing.
Which of your Planeswalkers were they stealing the abilities of?
So like Vivian Reed shoot down a thing. Let's see. Vivian Reed destroy an enchantment happened.
Okay.
And that's like a real thing. And then I know my opponent, I was playing some deck. So I was on stream with someone who was playing decks, and I was just like a guest commentator. So they had a bunch of different wacky decks that we were playing. And then like I know there was a game where my opponent had like a couple Thief of Sanities, and then like we had an Ajani, and they just like put some counters on their Ajani and just started cleaning our clock like faster, which was relevant. And I was like, okay, this sucks. And then the one time my opponent like played Nicol Bolas and just used Liliana's Barden Blood, I was like, dude, I'm out of here. I am done with this game. So I think it's going to come up way more than people think, because that's not like a slapped on static ability. Like that thing could blow somebody out in a big way, I think.
Yeah, definitely. There's just a lot of planeswalkers in the set, and even if none of them are like busted or whatever, their abilities, if you're putting them in a deck, they have abilities that are powerful at least sometimes. So it stands to reason that Nicol Bolas would use other planeswalkers' abilities sometimes, particularly even just if they are more than +1 loyalty.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm just looking forward to it coming up and being a thing, and then being like, oh boy, they can actually do that. And then that's just going to be your response a lot, which is, oh, they could do that. Because it's not always just going to be, oh no, plus make you discard, I'll draw a card, do it again. Like sometimes they might just absolutely humiliate their opponent, and it just would not surprise me.
Yeah, using Vivian to destroy an enchantment, that is nice. Grixis does not get to do that.
Yeah, man. That's just gonna come up sometimes. So I'm excited to see what Grixis decks look like, because
Same.
I don't know, Nicol Bolas. Yeah, I bet Nicol Bolas the Ravager was always like this good card that you just couldn't play, and then like Nicol Bolas, God Planeswalker thing, God Dragon or whatever it's called. Dragon God. I need to know this by Saturday. And just like I think Grixis just got a lot of help, which is good. And I think there's a lot of powerful cards there that just didn't get to see play that will probably start to see play now. So,
oh yeah, that's the biggest thing you can do for a deck too, is not just put in new cards, but free up existing cards that were just really powerful but not played.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like 4 mana, 4/4 flying, make you discard a card, turn into unbeatable Planeswalker. That thing was just on the sidelines for X months.
Yeah.
Not sure that was the goal of the printing of that card.
Yeah. Will be a really good card to put in your trade binder.
Yeah. Like, at some point, like if I'm a game designer, I'm like, hey, assholes, we need to make cards that make this card good. Like, get to work on the Grixis file for the next couple of sets. And it's like, all right, fine. Because it just doesn't make sense to me. That card just going to see no play in its lifespan. It's not like every day you see a creature that transforms into a planeswalker that no one can beat.
Right.
So I think it'll see a little bit of play moving forward. That's all I got. We're going to put a wrap on this thing, because now I got to clean my apartment, which you made fun of me for earlier before we started recording.
I did.
I do this thing where I clean my apartment before I leave for a trip, because I'm leaving to Orlando tomorrow for a trade show for Ultimate Guard, and then I'm going to Richmond for the show, and then I come home. So I'm leaving on Wednesday morning and not coming back until Monday. So it makes you wonder, why would I clean my apartment? And it's because I don't like coming home to a dirty apartment, because that's one more thing I have to do. So it makes me happy, like a movie, when you walk in like your home and you drop your bags and your place is actually clean before you pass on your couch. Ryan made fun of me for doing this.
If I leave my apartment for the weekend and I come back home and it's clean, how will I know that it's mine?
That is a weird stance to take.
Didn't have an answer.
It's tough to leave me speechless. You did it. Well done, sir. So I'm going to do all of the laundry and pack all of the things. And I guess if anyone's listening to this who's going to be at the PhD open house in Orlando, see you there. All 3 of you who are listening to this. And then we'll do some Richmond coverage, then we'll come home. So a pleasure as always, my friend. Thanks for joining me. He is Ryan Overturf at Ryan Overdrive on Twitter, and don't even think about trying to find him somewhere else.
You've already thought about it too much.
Actually, I'm going to try to find you on Snapchat.
I hope it's not possible.
Send you a friend request so you can't see.
It just like somehow gives me a notification on the app I deleted.
Yeah, hello. It's like those emails you get where it's like, sir, did you leave your cart full on accident before you closed out of this website? It's like, no, I meant to leave. You should re-download the app. Please, if you want your information and sell it to the government or various other people. Yeah, I'll try to find you on here. I'm done rambling. Thanks for listening. I got a wrestling podcast coming later this week, and then maybe some more Magic next week. Follow Ryan on Twitter. Don't follow me unless you want to. Peace out. All right, everybody. The outro this week's going to be real short because I have to head to the airport in about 12 minutes to make sure I'm able to check my bags and not miss my flight to Orlando for the PhD open house that I'm headed to now. Just woke up this morning, 7:11 a.m. here on a Wednesday in Seattle, Washington. So I hope you did enjoy the pod with me and Ryan there. Going to try to do a Mythic Championship preview and review for the rest of the Mythic Championships here this year because I just kind of like the style and the formatting of things. So hopefully you enjoyed them too. As you do know, you can subscribe, rate, and review the podcast over on iTunes. You can also find it on the podcast app, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, Patreon, some other place that I'm probably forgetting right now because it's early. But you know the places you can find the podcast. You can also Google it too. I suppose that counts. If you do want to become a patron, patreon.com/the Cedric Phillips podcast is where you can go. And I'll have another podcast later this week for the wrestling fans out there. Me and Joey Bags did some food talk and some wrestling talk on the pod that'll be going up on Friday. And it's Jewel Vera time, and it's time for me to run to the airport. Bye.